"Don't go to dinner with your son." That's exactly what my partner shouted across the living room, his face pale, his voice shaking like he'd just seen a ghost. And the crazy part, he wasn't joking. He wasn't being dramatic. He looked terrified, absolutely terrified, like he knew something about my own child that I didn't. And when he finally managed to tell me what he had learned about my son, just a few hours earlier, it felt like the floor cracked open beneath my feet. I stood there, frozen, gripping the back of the couch just to stay upright. My son, the boy I raised, the boy I loved, the boy I thought I understood. Everything changed in an instant, and I need you to tell me honestly, was I wrong for what I did next? Would you have reacted differently? Because what happened that night still keeps me awake. Sometimes I think I made the only choice I could. Other times I wonder if I destroyed something that can never be repaired. The story didn't start that night, though. If I'm being completely honest, the warning signs had been flickering in front of me for years, little moments I brushed off because I believed every parent should give their child the benefit of doubt. I raised my son mostly on my own after his father passed away when he was 10. It was just the two of us for a long time. I worked long hours, but I always made time for him. Late night talks, weekend breakfasts, all of it. And for a long time I thought we were fine. I thought he was kind, gentle, the sort of boy who helped neighbors carry groceries and held doors open for strangers. But as he got older, around 15 or 16, something changed. Maybe it was teenage rebellion, maybe grief, maybe something else entirely, but he started acting darker, moodier. He'd snap at me, glare at me, lie about little things, purposely break rules just to see how I'd react. I chalked it up to hormones. Doesn't every parent? By the time he left for college, we were on shaky but manageable ground. We talked, just not deeply. I knew he didn't approve of me dating again, and when I introduced him to my partner, Daniel, things got even weirder. My son wasn't rude, not exactly. He was just cold, polite in a way that felt like a mask. Daniel noticed it too, but he refused to make me feel bad about it. He'd always say, "He'll warm up eventually. He just needs time," and I believed him. I wanted to believe him. Fast forward a few years. My son was 24 and living in the city, working what he called a startup job, though I never fully understood what he actually did. He'd gone from calling me every few days to maybe once every 2 weeks, then sometimes once a month. I didn't push. Kids grow up, I told myself. They get busy. And even when those calls came, they were short, distracted. He always seemed irritated, like talking to me was some chore he needed to cross off a list. But he was my kid. I kept trying. So when he invited me to dinner out of the blue, at a fancy restaurant no less, I was thrilled. I told Daniel immediately. I remember how his whole face lit up the moment I said, "He wants to have dinner." Just the two of us. For weeks, Daniel had been encouraging me to reconnect with my son, telling me he probably just needed space. So this felt like a good step. But then everything went sideways. It was the morning of the dinner. Daniel had left early to run errands, and I was at home getting ready. Around noon he called me. He sounded strange, whispering, panicked. "Don't go to dinner with your son tonight," he said, and I actually laughed at first because it sounded so absurd. But he didn't laugh back. He didn't even breathe normally. "Please," he said, "I'm begging you. Stay home." I froze. "Daniel, what's going on?" There was a long silence. Then he said, "I ran into someone this morning. Someone who knows your son. Someone who told me things I didn't want to hear." He wouldn't say more on the phone, only that he was coming home immediately. My mind went wild. Was my son in trouble, sick, hurt, in danger? When Daniel finally walked in 20 minutes later, he looked like he'd aged 5 years in a single hour. He sat down across from me, rubbed his forehead, and said, "I didn't want to tell you. I really didn't. But you deserve the truth." Apparently, that morning, Daniel had met a woman named Claire. someone he used to work with before changing jobs. They hadn't seen each other in years. She recognized him, ran over, hugged him, and in the course of catching up, she mentioned she'd recently worked with my son through some sort of tech investment group. When Daniel said my son's name, she went pale. Daniel noticed immediately and gently asked if something was wrong. She hesitated, but eventually she told him things about my son, things that made my heart twist when Daniel repeated them to me. According to her, my son had been using people, manipulating them for money, connections, favors, not just small things, big things. He'd pretended to befriend investors, gained their trust, and then cut them off once he got what he needed. He'd lied about deals, exaggerated his involvement in projects, and even sabotaged a coworker's job opportunity by spreading rumors so he could take the position himself. But that wasn't the worst part. She told Daniel that my son had a reputation, a dark one. People said he had a temper, not the kind that flares and disappears, but the kind that simmered under the surface. She said he'd humiliated people publicly, manipulated girlfriends, controlled them. One girl had to get a restraining order. Another claimed he'd threatened to ruin her life if she ever talked about him in the wrong way. Claire didn't know every detail, but she knew enough to be afraid of him. When Daniel finished speaking, I didn't know what to think. No, let me correct that. I didn't want to think. I didn't want to believe any of it. This was my child, my sweet little boy who used to crawl into my bed after nightmares, the boy who cried when his goldfish died. But the more I sat there, the more all those memories of his teenage years came flooding back. The coldness, the manipulation, the lies, and suddenly those memories didn't seem like normal teenage rebellion anymore. Still, I needed to hear it from him directly. I told Daniel, I'm still going to that dinner. I need to talk to him myself. He grabbed my arm, terrified, but I pulled away. I wasn't afraid of my son, not then, not yet. When I arrived at the restaurant that evening, my son was already seated, tapping his foot impatiently like he'd been waiting too long. He didn't hug me. He barely smiled. He just nodded and said, finally, right away, something felt off. He wasn't acting like someone who wanted to reconnect. He was acting transactional, calculating. I asked how work was going, and he shrugged, changed the subject, asked about my finances, asked if Daniel and I had any plans to upgrade the house, asked if I'd ever considered investing in his new startup, said it was a guaranteed win. I'd heard that phrase too many times from too many scammers, but the moment everything snapped into place was when I gently said, "Your job sounds stressful. Are you treating people all right? Being respectful?" He froze, his eyes narrowed, and then he smirked, a cold little smirk. "People need to learn their place," he said. "If they don't listen, they get in the way. And people who get in the way don't deserve sympathy." My blood ran cold. So that's the situation I was in. I want to pause here and ask you directly, what would you have done in that moment? Before I tell you what happened next, seriously, comment below. If your child sat across from you and said something like that, something so callous, so cruel, what would you say? Would you confront them? Would you pretend you didn't notice? Or would you walk away completely? Because what I did next shocked even me. I took a deep breath and said, "I know what you've been doing at work." He stiffened. I told him everything, Claire, the rumors, the manipulations. His face twisted, but not with guilt, not even with anger, no. He looked offended, like I had disrespected him. "Who told you that?" He snapped. "That doesn't matter." I said, "I want to know if it's true." And then he said it, the sentence that broke me, "None of it matters if I'm getting what I want." I pushed my chair back. I stood. My knees were shaking, but I did it anyway. I looked him dead in the eyes and said, "I can't help you. Not like this. Not if this is who you're choosing to be." He laughed, actually laughed, and then he said, "You'll regret that." I walked out. I didn't look back. The aftermath was messy. He tried calling me, then he tried guilt, tripping me, then he tried threatening to cut me off completely. Like he was the one holding the power. I told Daniel everything, and he just held me while I cried. Days went by, weeks. My son went silent. Then I heard through a mutual acquaintance that he was let go from his job after yet another incident involving a coworker. He blamed everyone except himself. I haven't seen him since that dinner. Some days I wonder if I made the right choice. Other days I remind myself that love doesn't mean accepting harm. Love doesn't mean enabling cruelty. Sometimes the bravest thing a parent can do is say enough. So that's my story, that's the truth of it. If you were on my side, please like this video, it really helps. Subscribe for more stories like this and tell me in comments what you think. Was I right? Was I wrong? I'll see you all in the next story.